Ready to relinquish doubt and befriend your most actualized self?
Prime Video and executive producer and creator Little Marvin is back with their second season of Them, which was subtitled The Scare. In today's video, we'll be breaking down the final episode, which was directed by Ty West and titled The Box, and I'll also be sharing my thoughts about the ending and its connections to Season 1. But first, let's get the conversation going in the comments. What did you all think about Season 2? Did you have a favorite character, moment, or episode? What were some elements of the show that didn't work for you all, and what did you personally think of the ending? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. With that being said, let's break it all down. Full spoilers ahead. Now, the story is based in Los Angeles and set almost 40 years after the first installment, Covenant, and follows LAPD homicide detective Dawn Reeve. Now, she is assigned to investigate the murder of a foster home mother and is left shaken as she has no idea how close this case is to her actual family. Now, while this season wasn't nowhere near as traumatic or as focused on historical events like the Great Migration from Season 1, it did put a focus on generational trauma within the Emery family and its ties to the supernatural entity. We open the finale with Edmund making his last self-made video for his twin sister Dawn, as he looks into the camera and mentions how after leaving her house and being told to never return, all he sees is blood. Cut to Edmund waking up on the floor to find himself next to the demon that has taken the form of his Raggedy Andy doll as the police are banging on the door after discovering the body of the cameraman Donovan who he killed back in episode 4. Now, before moving forward, let's discuss the importance of the Raggedy Andy doll, which we learn its connections to Edmund after this episode. Now, the original Raggedy Ann doll was a character created in 1915 and was introduced to the public in 1918 in a book titled Raggedy Ann Stories and quickly became very popular. Now, its sequel, which was titled Raggedy Andy Stories in 1920, introduced the character of her brother, Raggedy Andy. Now, in the stories, Ann and Andy were twins and very close. Andy was often shown to be very feisty, confrontational, and a wannabe tough guy. Now, despite all that, he was very protective and close to his sister Ann. So with all that, you understand the parallels and see why these dolls were so important to their story. We watch as the demon tells Edmund to give himself to it as he promises to break them all like toys and bring her to them. Obviously choosing the words break and her, referring to the way he would kill his victims and breaking all their bones, and referring to her as his sister Dawn. As it was revealed in episode 5, this 1989 version of Edmund feels all hope was lost after trying to get advice from his second foster family, which happened to be all white, but wasn't welcomed to open arms, but also he didn't get the reunion he was hoping for from his sister as he agrees to unalive himself and give himself to the demon as the cops enter. You see Dawn trying to get some rest after losing her mother and she's having a nightmare. Now in this nightmare, she hears laughter coming from her mother's room as she opens the door to find her headless mother who turns around and says that she couldn't save her. As Dawn awakes and immediately hugs Cal tightly and promises to not let the demon hurt him. See Dawn's ex-husband Corey arrives as he apologizes after hearing what happened to her mother. Now after years of secrecy from her mother, Dawn finally looks in the box her mother hid from her and she sees these little cutouts that reads to her baby girl. Now Dawn gets interrupted as Detective Diaz pays his respects and hopes to have the evidence for Edmund soon, but wants to know why she needs it. Now, Dawn explains that the connections between the murders and she believes that Edmund is trying to reach out to her to tell their story, as she makes the ties from the foster home they lived in as kids to the killings of those twins. Dawn revisits the foster home against Diaz suggesting to not go back as we see both McKinney and Diaz are together spying on her. Now Diaz believes Dawn is spiraling out of control after losing her mom, but McKinney believes that she's the actual killer. Back inside, Dawn looks in the closet where she found those dirty diapers and broken dolls and is triggered and recalls when she first arrived on the murder scene and realizes that she was having memories from when she lived there as a kid. Now Dawn decides to go to Diaz's house to gather the evidence about her brother as she learns that Edmund killed before taking his own life, as she watches his tape and she realizes that he was the one that came to her house 2 years ago. As she watches the tape, we see that Dawn is understanding what Edmund is talking about when he mentions that sometimes he can't breathe and wants to scream but can't, as this was something that we saw Dawn struggle with at certain points throughout this season. Edmund continues talking about how they were treated at their foster home and him being the only one that can remember, as he brings up the closet in the box. As the video starts to cut in and out, she sees him in the red hair, and her and Diaz start to realize that he's the one that all the victims were talking about, including her son, before their death. deaths. In a panic, Dawn heads to the door to get back to her son as she's stopped by McKinney, who's pointing a gun directly at her. Now, Diaz tells McKinney that they don't have enough evidence to prove that she's the killer, but McKinney refuses and tells her to get down on the ground. Now, of course, Dawn doesn't listen as he reminds her that he's killed before and says that,
see, this is the problem giving you motherfuckers a badge. One little piece of power, you think you can do whatever the f you want.
You're not gonna shoot me.
No? You saw what I did to Lamar Watkins. You think that's a one-time deal? Get on the floor!
Now, Diaz and McKinney have a standoff, leaving Diaz getting shot in the shoulder. Meanwhile, McKinney runs over to stop Dawn from shooting him. As they have a bit of a tussle, she ends up killing him. Back at Dawn's house, Corey and Cal hear a noise as Corey grabs a knife and heads upstairs. As the Raggedy Ann and Andy theme song plays, Corey finds the entire upstairs covered in red strings as his feet get tied up and he gets pulled closer to the demon. Cal calls out for his dad as he's suddenly thrown from the upper floor down on Cal, who's confronted by the monster asking him if he's scared. Now, I gotta take the moment to admit that I thought the design of the demon Andy doll was pretty bad and extremely not scary at all, but we'll be discussing this a little bit later in the breakdown. As Dawn returns home to find Corey injured and asks where Cal is, she looks over at the TV and is told to come home by her twin brother. As Dawn enters her foster home again, she is immediately taken back to when they were kids and she sees a little Edmund getting yelled at and chased down by their foster mom. As things from the opening crime scene that triggered Dawn are starting to circle back, from her realizing the broken clock and the dining room doors, they both hide under the sink as it is revealed that this was the place that they hid whenever their foster mom would abuse them, and is the exact same place in which their foster mom's dead body was found in the opening scene of episode 1. As Dawn is dragged out of the sink and she sees the day that they were given to their foster mom by their biological mother. A very unexpected surprise, as it is revealed to be Ruby Lee Emery from Them Season 1, as she leaves her baby twins with their Ann and Andy dolls with their new foster mom. Now, this clearly connects the events and continues the trauma that the Emery family faced because of the deal Hiram made with the devil back in Season 1. Now, to take a bit of a deeper dive, remember in Season 1, Ruby faced the demon disguised as a white girl who was named Dolores. Now, Dolores tried to convince Ruby that her blackness made her ugly and that she should try to be more white. Now, this might be a bit of a stretch, but looking at Edmund and him being taken in by a white family, and at times in this season, he kind of struggled with his blackness, and now knowing who his mother is and that she struggled with a similar experience, this to me made another connection and made a connection between these characters shared between mother and son. Now, it is also important to understand why Ruby gave her babies away. As Ruby explains to the foster mom, her experience as a kid never left her, but she also promised to never become her mother and allow pain to consume her like the death of her sibling did, but she also thought that she was breaking the family curse by giving them a clean slate, or at least that's what she hoped. As Dawn screams to try to stop her mother from leaving, she watches her leave and is immediately thrown into a box, the same box in which they were thrown in when they were little. As we see just how they would suffer in this box and how they would help each other when it was tough to breathe. As this clearly explains why both Edmund and Dawn would say that it was hard to breathe, and whenever they felt overwhelmed by anxiety when they were older, it was based on the difficulty of breathing within this box. Dawn confronts the demon face to face, but is overpowered as it controls her body. As Dawn begins to see her version of the Ann doll come to life as a demon, and it wants her to join her and forget her own son. As Dawn pleads with Edmund to hear her and to protect her like he did when they were kids, and then she tells him that he wasn't her imaginary friend, but instead he was her best friend and the demon isn't him. See, this conversation works as the demon's body begins to bend and the bones start to break just like the victims, understanding that this was Edmund facing his demons from within. Now, Edmund wins his inner battle and we see that his normal self is starting to return, but we also see the Ann doll's self disappears. As his body is now broken, he looks up at his twin sister and tells her that he loves her just before his mouth cracks and he dies. Dawn eventually finds her son, who's unharmed and alive, and she lets him know that it's officially all over. We end with Dawn playing the audio of McKinney's last words and his confession to killing in front of her bosses as they decide to drop all the charges against Dawn. Now, before Dawn walks out, it's believed that McKinney fit the suspect description as the red-headed killer, as she says the killings will now stop. Now, Dawn is told that she can't get her old job back, but is offered a desk job as she answers with the NWA song playing for her response. As we flash forward to 6 months later, we watch a happy family dinner, including Corey, as it's most likely alluded to that they're going to probably get back together, which is unfortunate for poor Reggie. See, Dawn takes another look into her mother's hidden box, which to me had a double meaning in this episode, one being the literal box that her and her brother would be put in by their foster mom, but also this box representing the secrets that she kept away from her family origin. As she looks at a picture of her and her twin brother, as she notices another picture behind it, and it's one of the Emery family. Dawn is shocked to see the identical resemblance she has to her grandmother Lucky, as we end with the man walking up the stairs, whistling, and he walks towards her, as it is revealed to be the tap dance man from season 1 taunting her as he tells her,
"What you gonna do? What you gonna do?"
Now, for those who don't remember, the Tap Dance Man was a supernatural entity that targeted Dawn's grandfather, Henry Emery, and preyed on his frustrations with the everyday treatment he endured as a black man in America and made Henry do some pretty violent things. Now, Henry was shown in the finale of season 1 to defeat his demon by shooting it in the head and wiping off his black face to be revealed to be a white man. But now, does this mean its return to force Dawn to seek some type of revenge on those who wronged her and her family for a possible season 3? But before I share my thoughts on what a season 3 can potentially look like, let's backtrack and talk about those events from season 1. Now, in the finale, we were led to believe that the curse was broken, but now, was it? Was this Andy doll an extension of the deal Hiram made with the devil to kill them, aka the decades of black families that moved into the Compton area before being murdered, or was this a different demon altogether? I'm torn between both options being true because the Andy doll's true origins were never explained. The way the story was told, the demon appeared to be some type of urban legend that some people in the neighborhood knew of, going back to episode 2 and the drug dealer knowing that it was here to kill them all. Now, call this a plot hole, or maybe I just missed it entirely, but I don't recall them explaining the lore and mythology of this particular demon. Why did the victims cover their mirrors? Was this demon killing before Edmund, and did it kill during the 2 years after Edmund took his own life? All we know of the demon is that it took the form of the Andy doll, and it preyed on Edmund's weaknesses and fears of being alone with no family. Where does its power stem from? Why did it choose Edmund? Now, if this was a separate entity from the Hyman ghost, I want to go back to remembering the opening quote from Aristotle from episode 1 of this season. Was this demon a literal manifestation of fear, pain, evil, and the scare come to life? Let me know your thoughts on the origins and connections of this scare demon in the comments below. Now, overall, I'll give episodes 1, 4, and parts of the finale its credits for being the best episodes of the season. Especially episode 4, which was titled Happy Birthday Sweet Boy. To me, that had a really good balance of both plots, but also I thought the ending was pretty well executed as we watch Edmund make his first kill. Now, other things I enjoyed about this season was, being that I'm a 90s kid, I really enjoyed the soundtrack and the recreation of the 90s, the look and the feel, the hair, the makeup, the color grading, made it all feel like we were during those times. I also really appreciated Dawn's outfits because it felt like it was inspired by Janet Jackson's look from Poetic Justice as Justice. But as far as an overall season, I found most of the episodes and the characters to be pretty poorly written and extremely choppy in its pacing and tone, and it left a lot of unanswered questions. Now, some that come to mind are, what happened to the rest of the policemen involved with McKinney's secret group? Why did it take 2 years for the demon to find Dawn and begin its killings? I get the death of the foster mom and the twins angle, but what was the point of killing the drug dealer and the little Mexican boy? Now, was there a particular reason why they wasted the icon Pam Grier? And why did she struggle with what looked to be Parkinson's? And what was the deal with Cal's OCD? Now, I also thought the reveal of Edmund's story being 2 years before the main events was pretty obvious and wasn't a big surprise for me. I thought the show played his hand pretty obvious because remember when he was studying to be a serial killer in his role for that film, which he didn't get, he was watching a live taping of the Arsenio Hall show, and his guest that night was Jason Voorhees, who was promoting Friday the 13th Part 8. Now, as a big horror fan and a fan of that franchise, I immediately knew that that movie came out in 1989, and we knew that Dawn's story story took place in 1991. Now let me know if you all caught that, but also I knew it was a different time because the tension of the police were so much different from when they caught Edmund and when we saw how they were treating black people in 1991. So again, I knew that this was a past storyline and I thought that that reveal just fell flat for me, but again, let me know if you caught that in the comments below. Now, another thing I couldn't stand about this season was how underdeveloped the plot and the character stories were and how each episode almost felt like it was rushed and incomplete. But more importantly, the subtitle being The Scare. I'm sorry, but I don't care if you get scared from the smallest things. There's no way that the majority of people watching the show will find this season scary at all. Now sure, it played on the scare of Dawn being a black woman and working in primarily a male occupation and being the black officer during the Rodney King beatings, and it showed some of that earlier on in the season, which by the way, a lot of the racial undertones and the microaggressions were just so on the nose to me, and also they just really never explored the depths of Dawn being a black officer and how the black community viewed her. They touched on that a little bit in episode 2, but it was just very underdeveloped. Now, speaking of underdeveloped, but more particularly the tone being inconsistent, was it me or did Edmund's story feel comedic? Immediately, I think of the moment where I got the biggest laugh, and that was when we saw Edmund go to Donovan's house and he took a dump in his toilet. And I'm just thinking of the moments of his audition tapes of him trying to be a black Ted Bundy. Again, to me, a lot of his scenes played almost like a comedy versus it being a tragic story of a person who's alone and doesn't really know their identity and can't make personal connections. And I just felt like it was a parody of itself. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I thought the performance was bad, because I actually think that Luke James had the best performance of the show. I just felt the writers wrote the character to be just so ridiculous. And connecting that to the look of him becoming the Andal just was a complete joke. I did not like the design of that creature. And again, I just wish the story was taken more seriously and wasn't used as like a joke in my personal opinion. Now, bringing it back to what it could look like for season 3, does the show stick with the idea of the format of bringing back maybe 1 or 2 characters from this season or even season 1, and maybe we go to a new time period? Maybe it's the early or late 2000s and we explore a different racial situation. For example, bringing it to 2009 when we had Barack Obama becoming the president of the United States. And maybe connect it back to learning what happened to the rest of the Emery family and the events after season 1. Does Dawn look for her biological mother? Which, by the way, who was the father of those twins? That's going to be the end of this breakdown. Make sure to leave your thoughts on this season in the comments below. From your pros, your cons, your favorite moments, least favorite moments. What was your favorite episode? Who was your favorite character? Share any Easter eggs, theories, or deeper meanings you all took away. And what would you all like to see in a possible season 3 of them? Thank you all for watching this video. You all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.